The chandeliers dripped with light, each crystal catching the glow of hundreds of candles as if the heavens themselves had descended to glitter above the ballroom. Music swelled, violins and harps entwining, and laughter bubbled through the air like champagne. To anyone else, it might have been a dream, silk gowns, powdered wigs, jeweled smiles. But to Eleanor Whitcomb, it was a nightmare woven in satin. She stood at the edge of the dance floor, gloved hands clasped too tightly, nails biting into her palms through the thin fabric. She had chosen a gown of midnight blue, modest but elegant, hoping to vanish into the shadows of the ball. Yet shadows, she discovered, were cruelly unreliable when one was already the subject of whispers. 30, still unwed, a pity, truly. She'll wither there like a forgotten rose. No wonder her sister shines brighter. Look at her, radiance and bloom. The words weren't spoken to Eleanor directly. They rarely were. They floated just loud enough to be overheard, sharpened by laughter, poisoned by pity. Each word landed like a needle under her skin. Her younger sister, Cecily, twirled in the arms of her fiancé at the center of the room, radiant in ivory silk and pearls. Guests cheered, clinking glasses of champagne. And Eleanor, dutiful elder sister, faded guardian of propriety, was left standing like furniture, an ornament too dull to notice. No matter how hard she tried to lower her gaze, her ears caught the cruel barbs, and her chest burned with humiliation. She tried to smile when acquaintances passed, but the smile never reached her eyes. Her heart whispered only one plea: let this night end quickly. But then came the laugh. One laugh too sharp, too cruel, carrying across the marble floor like a bell. Eleanor froze, blood draining from her face. She knew it before turning. Lady Vivian Harrow, draped in rose silk, her beauty as practiced as it was venomous, held her fan to her lips and spoke with deliberate sweetness. Can you imagine, still waiting for a proposal at her age? 30 years and not a suitor in sight. If I were her, I should faint from the shame. Laughter burst from the circle around her. Eleanor's cheeks burned. Her throat constricted as if a corset had tightened around her lungs. She wanted to vanish, to melt into the polished floor. But she stood still, silent, because silence, she had always believed, was survival. Yet deep down, she knew the truth. Silence was surrender. The orchestra shifted into a new dance, couples moving to the center, and someone lifted a glass to make a toast. Eleanor felt the cruel spotlight tilting toward her. The sound of glass chiming against silver echoed like a summons. Heads turned toward Lord Edgewater, a pompous man with a red face and a booming laugh. He raised his goblet high. To Cecily Whitcomb, he announced, the most radiant jewel of the season, soon to be wed to a man of fortune and title. Applause filled the room. Cecily blushed prettily, dipping her head toward her fiancé. Eleanor clapped softly, proud of her sister despite the ache in her chest. But then Lord Edgewater grinned, eyes glinting with mischief. And let us not forget dear Eleanor, the elder sister. Ever so patient, ever so loyal. 30 years of devotion to her family. Why, if patience were a virtue, she would be the most virtuous lady in England. The laughter that followed wasn't kind. It rang loud and cruel, bouncing from crystal to marble, piercing Eleanor's composure. Her body went rigid. Whispers rose again, sharper this time. Perhaps the Duke will pity her. Or maybe she'll settle for a widower twice her age. Poor thing, her season has passed. Eleanor's vision blurred. She wanted to scream, to shout, to run, but her feet felt anchored, her voice trapped in her throat. The humiliation was unbearable. In that moment, she thought, this is who I am to them. A joke. A cautionary tale. An afterthought in pearls. And then, the air shifted. The crowd hushed, laughter faltering, as if something, or someone, had stolen the breath from the room. A ripple moved across the ballroom, drawing every gaze toward the entrance. Adrian Blackmore. The name alone carried weight, whispered in awe and fear alike. He was the Tun's most desired duke, wealthy, powerful, devastatingly handsome, and yet untouchable. Known for his aloofness, he had refused every match presented to him, sworn to remain unwed. And now he stood in the doorway, broad shoulders framed by the golden light of the chandeliers, dark hair falling just so, storm-grey eyes scanning the room. Conversations stilled. Fans fluttered nervously. Hearts skipped. Eleanor felt hers thunder painfully, though she told herself he had not come for her. Why would he? He never noticed her at past events. He never noticed anyone. But then his gaze found hers. As if pulled by a string, her body stiffened. His eyes lingered, not in pity, but in deliberate, startling interest. Eleanor's breath caught. The room seemed to lean in around her. Without warning, he moved through the crowd. Each step parted the sea of nobles until he stood before her, every whisper suffocating in the silence he carried. He bowed slightly, voice rich and low. "Lady Eleanor, would you honor me with this dance?" The ballroom gasped. Vivienne's fan snapped shut. Cecily's smile faltered. Lord Edgewater nearly choked on his wine. And Eleanor, burning with humiliation only moments before, was now drowning in disbelief. Her lips parted, but no words came. Every eye was upon her. Every whisper waited to be written in tomorrow's scandal sheets. Was this pity? Was this mockery? Or something else entirely? Eleanor placed her trembling hand in his, and the world erupted into scandal. What would you have done if the most desired man in the room chose you just as the world mocked you? Would you have trusted the Duke's intentions, or feared it was another cruel game? The morning after the ball dawned with a sky the color of tarnished silver, the air heavy with the promise of rain. Eleanor sat by the tall window of her chamber at the Whitcomb estate, her fingers curled around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The ballroom still lived inside her, every whisper, every laugh, every mocking toast replaying like cruel echoes. Yet woven into those memories was another moment, bright and bewildering, the Duke of Blackmore's hand outstretched, his storm-grey eyes fixed only on her. She lifted the cup to her lips and set it back down untouched. She did not know what unsettled her more, that the entire Tun had seen her humiliation, or that the Duke had shattered it with a gesture so unexpected, so dangerous. A dance with him was no small matter. It was a declaration, a disruption, an invitation for every gossiping tongue to spin. Down the corridor, the house stirred with celebration. Cecily was already awake, entertaining visitors who came to admire her ring, her beauty, her future. Their laughter drifted upward, light and easy, in sharp contrast to Eleanor's silence. She envied her sister nothing, or so she told herself. Yet something inside her ached, a longing not for jewels or suitors, but simply to be seen without derision. A knock startled her from her thoughts. The door creaked open and Cecily slipped inside, her golden hair gleaming, her cheeks flushed with triumph. "You should have heard them this morning," she said, eyes dancing. "All anyone can speak of is you." Eleanor's stomach tightened. "Me?" "Yes, you and the Duke. Imagine. Blackmore himself asking you to dance. I thought Lady Vivienne might faint dead away." Cecily laughed, a sound that always rang like silver bells, though now it carried a sharpness Eleanor could not ignore. "You have stolen my thunder, dearest. But I forgive you. After all, what scandal could possibly come of it? He shall never marry. Everyone knows that." Eleanor forced a small smile. "Then let them talk. By tomorrow, they will find another object of interest." Cecily moved to the mirror, admiring her reflection with a self-satisfied sigh. "Perhaps. But Lady Vivienne looked murderous. I almost pity you, Ellie. She does not forgive easily." The warning lingered after Cecily left. Eleanor clasped her hands together, staring at her own reflection in the window. She had always believed herself invisible. Now, she was anything but, and she did not know whether to tremble or to stand tall. That afternoon, Eleanor ventured into the gardens, seeking the cool air to clear her mind. The roses had begun to bloom, their scent heavy with rain, petals glistening like jewels. She trailed her gloved fingers along the hedges, inhaling the damp sweetness. For a moment she allowed herself to imagine another life, a life where she was not mocked, where she might walk freely without shadows of ridicule. Lady Eleanor. The voice, low and unmistakable, sent her heart racing. She turned sharply, nearly stumbling, to find the Duke of Blackmore standing a few paces away. He looked as though he had stepped from the very storm, dark coat, boots dusted with travel, eyes fierce and unreadable. She wondered if she had conjured him from thought alone. "Your Grace," she managed, her breath catching. "I hope I do not intrude." He bowed his head slightly, though his gaze never wavered. "I thought it proper to offer my apologies, if my actions last night caused you discomfort." Discomfort? The word seemed far too small. "You need not apologize," she said softly. "Though I confess, I do not understand why you chose me." "Because they mocked you," he said simply. "And because I will not abide cruelty." Eleanor blinked, stunned by his bluntness. Yet beneath his words lay something else, something heavier. His eyes searched hers, as if daring her to look away. She could not. They walked slowly down the gravel path, silence stretching between them, broken only by the whisper of leaves. Eleanor's mind raced. Every step beside him felt like a proclamation. If anyone saw them, the whispers would double, the scandal deepen. Yet she could not bring herself to retreat. At length, Adrian spoke again, his tone quieter, as though confiding. "You must know, Lady Eleanor, that society feeds on weakness. They will mock you until you break, or until you teach them you cannot be broken." Eleanor's chest tightened. "And you, Your Grace? They speak of you as though you were carved of stone. Untouchable. Do you never tire of it?" His jaw clenched, a flicker of pain shadowing his expression. "Stone cracks, Lady Eleanor. But no one cares to look closely enough to see it." Her breath caught. She wanted to ask more, to peel back the armor he wore, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she said the only truth she dared: "Thank you. For seeing me when no one else would." Their eyes held, and in that silence something passed between them, a fragile recognition, as if two invisible souls had brushed against one another. Eleanor felt heat rise in her cheeks and turned away quickly, staring at the roses. "I should return before my absence is noted." "Of course." His bow was crisp, but his voice softened. "Until we meet again, Lady Eleanor." When she finally returned to the house, her heart still pounded, her mind spinning with questions she could not answer. Why had he sought her out? Why her, of all women? And what shadows lingered behind his steady gaze? By evening, the whispers had spread like wildfire. Eleanor sat in the drawing-room with her mother, listening as visitors chattered of nothing but the Duke. Every sentence seemed to end with her name. "Did you see them together in the gardens? Perhaps she has finally ensnared him." "No. Impossible. Blackmore would never wed. He needs no one." Eleanor kept her head bowed, stitching embroidery she could not see. Each word stabbed at her composure. She wanted to scream that it was nothing, that she had not ensnared anyone, but the truth lodged inside her like a secret. Because part of her, despite fear, despite humiliation, wanted it not to be nothing at all. Her mother, Lady Whitcomb, cleared her throat. "Eleanor, dear, you must tread carefully. Adrian Blackmore is not a man to be toyed with, nor a man society will forgive easily. His attention may shield you for a moment, but it may also ruin you." Eleanor set down her needle, hands trembling. "And what am I now, mother?" Already they laugh. Already I am ruined by inaction. At least now, they see me. Lady Whitcomb's expression softened, though sorrow clouded her eyes. She reached for Eleanor's hand. Do not confuse being seen with being loved, my child. The words echoed long after the room had emptied. 2 days later, Eleanor attended another gathering, an afternoon tea hosted by Lady Harrow. She had no choice. Refusal would be deemed cowardice. She arrived in pale lavender silk, her chin lifted, though her heart trembled beneath every gaze. Lady Vivienne greeted her with a smile too sweet to be genuine. Lady Eleanor, how delightful you could join us. I trust you are well after your eventful evening with the Duke. Murmurs rippled through the circle of women. Eleanor forced a steady voice. Quite well, thank you. Vivienne's eyes glittered with malice. How fascinating that he should notice you at last. Some might call it destiny. Others, pity. Her words dripped like poison into the air. The ladies tittered, fans fluttering. Eleanor swallowed hard, the sting sharp. But then, something within her shifted. Perhaps it was the memory of Adrian's gaze, steady and unflinching. Perhaps it was exhaustion from years of silence. Whatever it was, she lifted her eyes and said, evenly, if pity guided him, then pity is far nobler than cruelty, Lady Vivienne. The room fell silent. For the first time, Eleanor did not cower. Vivienne's smile faltered, her cheeks flushing. Eleanor excused herself gracefully, leaving behind a stunned hush. As she stepped outside into the sunlight, her heart pounded with a wild mixture of fear and exhilaration. She had spoken. She had defended herself. And though whispers would continue, she felt something unfamiliar, power. That evening, a carriage stopped before the Whitcomb estate. Eleanor, standing by the window, recognized the crest before the footman even knocked. The Blackmore crest. Her pulse quickened. The butler ushered the Duke into the drawing-room, where Eleanor sat waiting, her hands cold despite the fire crackling in the hearth. He bowed, formal as ever, but his eyes betrayed urgency. Lady Eleanor, he said, I hope you forgive the impropriety of my visit. I wished to see you, to ask if you suffered on account of Lady Harrow's cruelty. Eleanor's lips parted. How did you? I hear more than most expect. His mouth curved faintly, though the smile did not reach his eyes. And I will not allow you to stand alone against vipers. Her chest ached with conflicting emotions, fear, longing, disbelief. Why me, your grace? Why involve yourself in my humiliation? He hesitated, and for a heartbeat she saw vulnerability crack through the stone. Because you remind me that even the strongest walls can hide fractures. And perhaps, because I see in you a courage you do not yet see in yourself. The silence stretched, charged, fragile. Eleanor's throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to insist he was mistaken. Yet deep down, something whispered that he was right. Before she could speak, a knock at the door startled them both. A servant entered, delivering a sealed envelope. Adrian's jaw tightened as he accepted it. His eyes darkened as he broke the wax. Whatever words he read, his face revealed little, but Eleanor caught the flicker of anger. He folded the letter sharply, sliding it into his coat. Forgive me. There are matters I must attend. He bowed again, his voice low. Do not let them silence you, Lady Eleanor. And then he was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of musk and the pounding of Eleanor's heart. The rain began to fall that night, tapping softly against Eleanor's window. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, torn between fear and hope. For the first time, she felt the fragile spark of possibility. Dangerous, intoxicating, impossible to ignore. What would it mean, if the most desired duke in England truly saw her? What would it cost her, if he did not? As the storm rolled over the estate, Eleanor whispered into the dark, what if, This changes everything. And though no answer came, she knew the question itself had already changed her. Equals 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 equals. The morning light filtered through gauzy curtains, but the world felt anything but gentle. Eleanor awoke to the sound of voices downstairs, hushed, urgent, the kind that made one's heart stumble. She pulled on a robe, smoothed her hair, and descended the staircase, every step echoing through the Whitcomb estate like a drumbeat of dread. In the drawing room, her mother and Cecily sat stiffly, their faces pale. On the table lay the scandal sheet, its pages fresh with ink, the headline so bold it seemed to burn. The untouchable Duke dances with a forgotten spinster. What could it mean? Eleanor froze. Her name, Eleanor Whitcomb, printed there for the ton to devour, her humiliation woven into entertainment for strangers. They quoted Lord Edgewater's cruel toast, painted her as desperate, and, worse, suggested the Duke had been moved by pity rather than admiration. Cecily glanced up, her lips pressed into a thin line. I told you they would not be kind. Her mother sighed, placing a hand to her forehead. This is dangerous, Eleanor. Every matchmaker in London will think you conniving, and Vivienne, oh, she will not stop until you are destroyed. Eleanor's chest tightened, a slow suffocation. She picked up the paper, her hands trembling, and forced herself to read each line. If she pretended not to care, the words would haunt her all the same. Better to face them head-on. Better to let the wound sting than fester. But then came the final sentence, a line so sharp it drew blood. Perhaps desperation has driven Lady Eleanor to ensnare even the Duke of Blackmore, who swore never to wed. Her throat constricted. To be painted as a schemer, to be mocked as a woman who laid traps with her fading beauty, the cruelty was unbearable. She set the paper down and turned away, blinking back tears. No matter how hard she tried, she could not silence the question clawing at her heart. Was this what he thought too? That afternoon, the Whitcombs attended another gathering at Lady Fenwick's townhouse. The air was thick with perfume and judgment, fans fluttering like daggers in gloved hands. As soon as Eleanor stepped into the room, silence rippled through the crowd. She felt the weight of their gazes, mocking, curious, ravenous for scandal. Vivienne Harrow glided toward her, smile sharp as glass. Lady Eleanor, she purred, how enchanting to see you. It seems you are quite the darling of the papers. What fortune you have, to be noticed at last. Eleanor steadied herself, meeting Vivienne's gaze. Fortune does not always bring peace, Lady Vivienne. Sometimes it brings wolves to the door. Vivienne's eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, another voice cut through the air, low, steady, commanding. Lady Eleanor. The crowd parted as Adrian Blackmore approached, every inch of him the Duke, tall, severe, untouchable. He bowed over her hand, his lips brushing her glove, and for the first time Eleanor saw a flicker of warmth in his storm-grey eyes. Gasps rippled through the gathering. Vivienne's smile froze. Cecily clutched her fiancé's arm in shock, and Eleanor's heart pounded so hard she feared it might shatter the silence. Adrian's gaze lingered on her, unyielding. Might I have a word? The room spun. Every ear strained to catch her reply. With trembling composure, she nodded. Of course, Your Grace. They walked through the side doors into Lady Fenwick's conservatory, the air heavy with jasmine and damp earth. Sunlight spilled through glass panes, glinting off Adrian's profile. Eleanor kept her eyes lowered, fighting the heat in her cheeks. He stopped, turning to face her fully. You've seen the papers. It wasn't a question. Yes, she whispered. They find pleasure in my humiliation. His jaw tightened. Then they are fools. You did not deserve that mockery. She looked up, startled by the vehemence in his voice. And yet you know what they whisper, that I seek to ensnare you. That she faltered, her throat tight. That I used you. Adrian stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, the faint scent of musk and bergamot curling through the air. "Tell me, Lady Eleanor, did you?" Her breath caught. For one dizzy moment she wanted to scream no, to insist on her innocence, but pride held her tongue. She met his gaze instead, steady despite her trembling. "If I had wished to ensnare you, Your Grace, do you think I would have hidden in shadows all these years?" The words hung between them, sharp and vulnerable. Adrian's eyes softened, the storm receding. "No," he murmured. "I do not." The silence stretched, charged with something unspoken. Eleanor's heart thundered, her pulse a drumbeat of fear and longing. For the first time, she wondered if he saw her not as pity, nor scandal, but as herself. They returned to the ballroom together, whispers following like shadows. Vivienne's eyes blazed with fury. Cecily bit her lip, torn between jealousy and worry. And Lady Whistledown's quill, though unseen, surely dripped with ink for tomorrow's column. Eleanor knew the world had changed in those few stolen moments. She was no longer invisible. She was a scandal, a story, a woman bound now to the Duke's gaze. What she did not yet know was how dangerous that gaze truly was, nor how close she stood to the edge of ruin and revelation. Equals 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 equals. The night had barely cooled the air when Eleanor found herself staring at her reflection, candlelight dancing across the polished glass. The scandal sheets had not slowed. In fact, each morning they seemed to grow bolder, more venomous, more convinced that her dance with the Duke was not only desperate but calculated. Yet instead of retreating, she found herself at more gatherings, her presence demanded now by the very society that once ignored her. At Lady Marbury's soirée, the chandeliers burned bright and the music was relentless. Couples filled the floor, laughter rippling beneath the sweep of strings. Eleanor stood near a marble pillar, trying to vanish into its shadow, when she felt his presence before she saw him. Adrian Blackmore entered the room with the ease of a man who owned it. The hush that followed was involuntary, as if every breath in the room bent to him. Her heart thudded. Would he notice her again? Would he dare? Moments later, he was at her side. "Lady Eleanor," he said, his voice low, rich with something unreadable. "The gardens here are less suffocating. Will you walk?" Gasps fluttered behind fans as she placed her hand on his arm. Together they stepped into the moonlit night, whispers trailing them like footsteps. The garden was drenched in silver light, roses bowing beneath the weight of dew. Adrian slowed his pace, his gaze fixed on the path, as though words weighed heavy on his tongue. "They think me cruel," he said at last. "That I delight in scandal. That I toy with you." Eleanor's breath clouded in the cool air. "And do you?" His eyes snapped to hers, fierce, unflinching. "No. I chose you because they mocked you, because you stood silent while they tried to break you, and I could not endure it." Her chest tightened. "But pity is no foundation for anything, Your Grace." "Pity?" His mouth curved, almost bitter. "Do you truly think I pity you, Lady Eleanor?" The silence between them was alive, thick with tension. He stepped closer, close enough that the scent of leather and musk filled her lungs. "You intrigue me. You unsettle me. That is no pity." Her lips parted, but no words came. Her pulse raced, every heartbeat a confession. And yet, in the back of her mind, doubt gnawed. Why now? Why me? Inside, the rival waited. Lady Vivienne Harrow's eyes gleamed as she watched them return. She curtsied to Adrian with feigned sweetness. "Your Grace, we missed you on the dance floor. Perhaps you would honor me next." The words were a knife, sharpened with challenge. Adrian bowed politely but said nothing, his silence more wounding than rejection. Eleanor's cheeks burned, knowing Vivienne's wrath would sharpen. Later that evening, a note slipped into Eleanor's hand, folded tight, the handwriting hurried. She unfolded it beneath the tablecloth, her heart stumbling. Beware, Lady Eleanor. His hand is already promised. Do not fool yourself into believing otherwise. Her fingers trembled. She shoved the note into her reticule, her mind whirling. Promised? To whom? Vivienne? Or another? The thought was unbearable. The next morning, she wandered into the library to escape her mother's gentle cautions and Cecily's smug teasing. Books lined the walls, their spines worn, their scents of leather and ink soothing. She trailed her fingers along the shelves, seeking calm. Adrian appeared in the doorway. He moved with that same storm-born presence, and the room seemed smaller with him in it. You look troubled, he said quietly. She lifted her chin. Do you speak from observation, or from certainty, Your Grace? He stepped closer, the floor creaking beneath his boots. From truth. Tell me what haunts you. Her hand closed around the hidden note in her pocket. She wanted to ask, to demand, but fear held her tongue. What if it were true? What if she was merely a convenient diversion? Instead, she whispered, Do you ever tire of being hunted? He froze, then exhaled slowly. Every day. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something unspoken tethered them, a shared exhaustion, a shared defiance. She felt it like a thread pulling tight between them, fragile yet unbreakable. By the week's end, the whispers had sharpened into claws. At a musicale hosted by the Duchess of Penworth, Vivienne struck again. While Eleanor sat near the pianoforte, Vivienne approached with a smile painted in venom. I suppose the Duke finds amusement where he can, she said sweetly, her voice carrying just enough for nearby ears. Still, one must wonder, why now? Why you? The audience chuckled softly. Eleanor's heart pounded, but she met Vivienne's gaze. Perhaps he prefers sincerity to artifice, Lady Vivienne. A hush fell. Vivienne's eyes flashed, her fan snapping shut with a crack. The Duchess's brow arched in amusement, and whispers filled the silence. Eleanor's cheeks burned, but she held her ground. For once, she did not retreat. Later, as Adrian escorted her to her carriage, he leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. You are braver than you know. Her heart leapt, but the note in her pocket burned hotter. Was he lying? Was this a game? She settled into the carriage, her mind torn between longing and suspicion. The city lights blurred past as the wheels clattered over cobblestones. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass, whispering to herself, What am I becoming? Because she knew the truth now, she was no longer invisible. And that terrified her more than the laughter ever had. Equals 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 equals. The rain had been falling since dawn, a steady curtain that blurred the cobbled streets and left the air damp with the scent of stone and roses. Eleanor sat in the Whitcomb drawing-room, a book open in her lap though she had not read a word. Her thoughts wandered back to the note slipped into her hand at Lady Marbury's soirée. The one that claimed Adrian's hand was already promised. The words had sunk into her bones like ice, whispering doubts she could not silence. Her mother entered, setting aside her embroidery. You are restless, Eleanor. Your pacing wears grooves into the rug. Eleanor lifted her head. Would you have me sit idle while society tears me apart in their papers? Would you have me pretend that nothing has changed? Lady Whitcomb's eyes softened with weariness. I would have you protect your heart. The Duke is powerful, yes, but he is also dangerous. His affection could ruin you more surely than mockery ever did. Before Eleanor could answer, the butler appeared at the door. Your Grace, the Duke of Blackmore. The world seemed to tilt. Adrian entered, dark coat beaded with rain, storm-grey eyes alight with purpose. He bowed to Lady Whitcomb and turned his full attention on Eleanor. Might I speak with you, alone? Her mother hesitated, then rose and swept from the room. Silence followed, broken only by the drip of rain from his cloak. Eleanor's pulse thudded painfully as Adrian stepped closer. "You have heard whispers," he said, voice low. "You have read lies. And now you doubt me." She drew a sharp breath. "Am I wrong to? Notes are passed into my hand, warning me that you are already promised, that I am nothing more than amusement." Anger flickered across his face. He removed a folded letter from his coat and held it out. "Then let us be honest with each other. Read." Her hands trembled as she unfolded the parchment. It was a copy of the inheritance clause that shackled him. If he did not wed by year's end, the Blackmere estate would pass to his cousin. The words blurred before her eyes, the weight of them sinking like lead. She looked up, voice raw. "So it is true. You must marry." "Yes." His jaw tightened. "But do not mistake necessity for deceit. I chose to dance with you. I chose to seek you out in gardens and libraries. No clause compelled me to that." Her throat tightened. "Then why not tell me sooner?" "Because I feared you would think what you think now, that I am a man grasping for survival, willing to snare any woman foolish enough to take pity on me." He stepped closer, his voice breaking. "But I am not grasping. I am choosing. And I chose you." Her chest ached with conflicting tides, hope and fear, longing and suspicion. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust the way his gaze lingered, steady and unflinching, as though she were the only soul in the world. Silence stretched, heavy and charged. Then, as if surrendering to something greater than both of them, Eleanor whispered, "You terrify me." Adrian's hand brushed hers, tentative, reverent. "And you undo me." The fire cracked in the hearth, heat filling the space between them. Eleanor's breath came shallow as she felt his thumb graze her gloved hand. For a moment, all her doubts dissolved in the warmth of that touch. Days later, whispers turned venomous. Lady Vivienne had orchestrated her cruelty with precision. At a masquerade hosted by the Marchioness of Davenport, Eleanor arrived in silver silk, her mask delicate lace. She hoped to vanish into the glittering sea of anonymity, but Vivienne's trap had already been set. As the orchestra hushed between sets, a footman presented a sealed letter to the Marchioness. With theatrical flourish, Vivienne urged her to read it aloud. The words, penned in a hand forged to mimic Eleanor's, dripped with false ambition. "Dearest Adrian, my scheme is nearly complete. Soon, with the world convinced, I shall rise above the mockery of age and win your fortune besides. Your name will secure me, as I have always planned." Gasps filled the room. Masks turned toward Eleanor, eyes wide with disgust, pity, contempt. Her breath fled her lungs, her face flaming beneath the lace. "I did not write this," she whispered, but her voice drowned in the uproar. Vivienne's laugh cut sharp. "How clever, Lady Eleanor, to ensnare a duke with quills and lies. But cleverness cannot hide desperation." Eleanor's knees threatened to give. She searched the crowd, her eyes finding Adrian's across the room. For a heartbeat, terror gripped her. What if he believed it? What if every step they had taken toward one another was undone in an instant? But his gaze was steady, storm-gray and unyielding. He crossed the room in measured strides, silence falling with each step. Standing before her, he took her trembling hand and lifted it to his lips. "Lady Eleanor is no liar," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "And she will not stand alone." Gasps echoed, scandal erupted, and Vivienne's face twisted in rage. But Eleanor heard none of it. All she felt was the press of his lips to her glove. All she saw was the certainty in his eyes. And in that moment, despite every whisper, she believed him. Equals 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 equals. The scandal would not die. In fact, it grew teeth. By the following week, every drawing room, every tea table, every scandal sheet carried Eleanor's name. The spinster schemer. The Duke's desperate rose. Gossip bit harder than any blade, and though Adrian had defended her publicly, whispers painted his gesture as gallantry, nothing more. At the Whitcomb estate, Eleanor sat at her writing desk, staring at a blank sheet of paper while rain streaked the windows. The forged letter still haunted her. Someone had wanted to ruin her, and they had succeeded. Her hand shook as she dipped the quill, but she could not write. Her thoughts circled one question: does he truly believe me? The door creaked open. Her mother entered, eyes lined with worry. Eleanor, you cannot keep enduring this. It is tearing you apart. Already, invitations have dwindled. Even Cecily's fiancé grows nervous of the association. Eleanor's chest tightened. So I am to retreat? To hide and let them win? Her mother's silence was answer enough. That evening, Adrian visited. His expression was storm-dark, his coat still damp from the rain. When Eleanor entered the drawing-room, his eyes searched hers, and she saw something she had not seen before: hesitation. "Your Grace," she said softly. "Eleanor." His voice was low, careful. He moved toward the hearth, staring into the fire as though it held answers. "The city devours us. Each day the lies grow louder. My cousin whispers in Parliament that I have been duped. My estate's council begins to question my judgment. Every step I take toward you feels like another step toward ruin." The words pierced. Eleanor's breath caught. "Then you regret it, dancing with me, defending me." His head snapped up, eyes burning. "No, I regret nothing. But I cannot deny the noose tightening around us, and I cannot allow you to be crushed beneath it." She swallowed hard, her hands trembling. "Do you mean to walk away?" Silence. The crackle of the fire. The storm beyond the windows. "Finally," he said, "perhaps it is better." The air left her lungs as though she had been struck. She forced her chin high, though tears stung her eyes. "Better for whom? For your estate? For your name? Or for your heart, which you guard as though it were already buried?" His face hardened. "You think me cold. But I have known betrayal, Eleanor. I watched the woman I once trusted choose gold over love, security over faith. I swore I would never be so weak again. And now," his voice cracked, then steadied, "now I feel myself unraveling. And it terrifies me." Her throat burned. She wanted to reach for him, to remind him that vulnerability was not weakness. But his distance was a wall, cold and unyielding. "Then you leave me to stand alone," she whispered. "Perhaps it is the only way you survive this," he said, voice raw. He bowed stiffly and left, the echo of the door slamming ringing in her ears. The days that followed were bleak. Invitations ceased entirely. Even Cecily, radiant and adored, avoided Eleanor in public. The Whitcomb name became a stain, whispered of with disdain. Eleanor confined herself to her chamber, wandering only the garden paths when no one could see. One evening, she sat by the window, moonlight spilling across her lap, when a servant entered with a folded paper. No seal, no mark of sender. She unfolded it with trembling hands. "Adrian tires of you. He knows your game. Spare yourself further humiliation and depart before you are cast aside." Her chest constricted. Her eyes blurred. Another forged letter, this time meant to break her spirit, to convince her she had lost him. She sank to her knees, the paper crumpled in her fists. "Why?" she whispered into the silence. "Why do they hate me so?" Her tears fell freely, unchecked. She thought of Adrian's eyes, the way he had looked at her with fire and fear both. She thought of the moments in gardens, in libraries, when he had seen her, truly seen her. Were those moments lies? Or was this, the notes, the whispers, the lie? She did not know which truth to believe. At Blackmore House, Adrian stared into his brandy, exhaustion carved into his features. His cousin leaned against the mantel, smirking. "You see, Adrian, this is what comes of dallying with desperation. The Ton laughs at you. Investors lose faith. Even the Queen hears whispers. You must end it before your estate is lost entirely." Adrian's grip tightened on the glass until it nearly shattered. "You think me weak. I think you reckless." Adrian turned away, his mind a battlefield. Eleanor's face rose before him, proud even in pain, steady even in humiliation. She had spoken to him with courage when others cowered. She had defied Vivienne in public. She was no schemer. He knew it in his bones. And yet, the weight of duty pressed like chains. At the Whitcomb estate, Eleanor knelt in the garden dirt, pulling weeds with hands ungloved, her gown stained. She welcomed the sting of thorns, the ache in her fingers. It grounded her when the world spun too fast. She whispered to the roses, her voice hoarse, "I will not break. I cannot." But even as she said it, her heart whispered the darker truth, "I already am." Equals 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 equals. The morning broke with a restless wind sweeping across the city, rattling shutters and carrying the scent of wet cobblestones. Eleanor woke to find the forged letter still crumpled on her bedside table, its cruel words etched into her thoughts. She pressed her palms against her eyes, willing herself not to cry again. Yet beneath the sorrow lay a pulse of anger, at Vivienne, at society, at Adrian himself for doubting her. By noon, the Whitcomb estate was alive with uneasy whispers. A maid hurried into Eleanor's chamber, cheeks flushed. "My lady, there is a visitor. He insists on speaking with you." Eleanor's heart lurched. "Who?" "His Grace, the Duke of Blackmore." For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She rose, smoothed her gown with trembling hands, and followed the maid down the corridor. Every step felt heavy with dread, yet some fragile hope flickered in her chest. Adrian stood in the drawing-room, his cloak dusted with rain, his eyes darker than any storm. When Eleanor entered, he turned sharply, as though he had been pacing. "Eleanor," he said, her name rough on his tongue, "I have wronged you." Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. He stepped closer, producing 2 letters from his coat. One, the cruel forgery she had received. The other, its twin, identical in hand, sent to him with lies of her betrayal. "These were not your words," he said firmly. "They were hers. Vivienne's. I have proof." Eleanor's chest tightened. "Proof?" "A servant she bribed confessed. He brought me the originals. She forged them to drive us apart." His jaw clenched, fury simmering beneath control. "And I believed them. I doubted you. For that, I beg your forgiveness." Eleanor swayed, the weight of relief and anger colliding. "So all this time, I suffered under her cruelty while you—" She broke off, her voice trembling. "You left me to face it alone." Adrian flinched as though struck. He moved closer, lowering his voice. "I was a coward. I let my fear of betrayal blind me to the truth I knew in my bones, that you would never deceive me. And losing you these past days has shown me what I cannot live without." Her heart thundered. She wanted to resist, to hold on to her anger, but his eyes burned with such raw sincerity it stole her breath. "Eleanor," he whispered, "I love you. Not for duty, not for necessity. You are the only woman who has ever defied them all and still stood tall. I cannot undo my mistakes, but I will stand by you now, no matter the cost." Tears blurred her vision. She turned away, pressing her hand to her mouth, her chest aching with too many emotions at once. "Do you know what they will do if you choose me? The ridicule, the ruin." He closed the distance, gently taking her hand. Let them. They will not silence me, and they will not silence you. Together, we are stronger. She met his gaze, and in his storm-grey eyes she saw not pity, not obligation, but truth. For the first time, she let herself believe it. Then we fight, she whispered. Together, he vowed. That night, Eleanor found herself in the library with him once more, candlelight flickering across shelves of leather-bound volumes. He spread maps and documents across the table, his estate papers marked with notes. You said you have skill in household management, Adrian said, glancing at her. Then I ask your counsel. The land, the tenants, the debts, they require strategy one alone cannot master. But you, his voice softened. You see details others miss. You see people, Eleanor. She stared at the papers, then at him. For so long she had been dismissed, overlooked, invisible. And now, the most powerful man she had ever known was inviting her to stand as his equal. Her hand trembled as she picked up a ledger, scanning the columns. Your steward neglects repairs on the western farms. If restored, yields could double by autumn. And the tenants would bless you for it. A smile touched Adrian's lips, small, fleeting, but real. You are remarkable. Her cheeks warmed. No, I am merely useful. He reached across the table, brushing her fingers with his. No, Eleanor. You are indispensable. The air thickened between them. Her pulse quickened, and for a moment she feared the silence would shatter her. His thumb lingered against her skin, his eyes searching hers with unguarded intensity. Her breath caught. Adrian. He leaned closer, his voice rough. Say you believe me now. Say you will not doubt again. Her throat tightened. I want to, but my heart is still raw. Then let me heal it, he whispered. The words hung between them, fragile, dangerous, filled with promise. By the week's end, the plan was set. They would confront Vivienne at the Queen's banquet, exposing her lies before the highest circle of society. Eleanor's nerves twisted at the thought, but Adrian's hand steadying hers lent courage she had never known she possessed. On the eve of the banquet, as the moon rose over the Whitcomb Gardens, Eleanor stood with Adrian beneath the roses heavy with dew. You asked me once why I chose you, he said quietly. It was not pity. It was because, in that moment, when the world laughed at you, I saw strength greater than any jewel in that room. You did not bow. You did not break. And I knew I could not look away again. Her heart broke open, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. And you, the untouchable Duke, will you truly risk it all? He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away a tear. For you, Eleanor, I would risk everything. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch, and for the first time in weeks, hope bloomed fierce within her chest. Equals 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 equals. The Queen's banquet glittered brighter than any gathering of the season. Gold chandeliers spilled light like liquid across the marble, and courtiers shimmered in silks and jewels, their eyes sharp as blades behind the smiles. Eleanor entered on Adrian's arm, every whisper in the room sharpening into scandal. The spinster. The schemer. Daring to walk beside him here. Eleanor's heart pounded beneath her gown of deep sapphire, her gloves damp with nerves. Yet Adrian's hand was steady on hers, his presence commanding the space like thunder. He leaned close, his voice low enough for her alone. Remember, you do not walk into this room alone. Not tonight. She drew a breath, lifting her chin. At the far end of the hall, Lady Vivienne Harrow gleamed in ivory silk, her smile wicked, her fan snapping open like a blade. She had spread enough lies to drown Eleanor, and now she prepared to deliver the final blow. When the orchestra paused, Vivienne stepped forward with a folded letter. Your Majesty, she said sweetly, curtsying to the Queen, I regret to disturb your celebration, but truth demands its voice. Lady Eleanor Whitcomb has deceived us all. I hold here her own words, confessing her plot to ensnare his grace for his fortune. Gasps echoed. The Queen's brow arched, eyes narrowing on Eleanor. Eleanor's knees trembled, but Adrian's voice cut across the hall. Enough. He strode forward, taking the letter from Vivienne's hand. He unfolded it with deliberate calm, the silence in the room suffocating. Then he turned, holding it high. This letter is a forgery, and I can prove it. He gestured, and a young servant stepped forward, pale and trembling. This man was paid by Lady Harrow to pen Eleanor's name and deliver it where it would wound most. He has confessed, before witnesses. These lies are hers, not Eleanor's. A shocked murmur rolled through the crowd. Vivienne's face blanched, then flushed with fury. He lies. He speaks truth, Adrian thundered. His storm-grey eyes burned as he looked out across the hall. Lady Eleanor Whitcomb is no schemer. She has endured cruelty and mockery with grace while I doubted her. But no longer. He turned to Eleanor, his voice lowering but carrying enough for all to hear. This woman has saved me. Her counsel has preserved my estate. Her courage has silenced my fears. She is no forgotten spinster. She is the Duchess I choose, now and always. The hall erupted. Some gasped, some applauded, some whispered furiously. But Eleanor heard none of it. Her breath caught as Adrian sank to one knee before the Queen, his hand still clasping hers. Your Majesty, with your blessing, I claim Lady Eleanor as my wife. The Queen studied them both, her gaze sharp. Then slowly, she nodded. Rise, Duke of Blackmer. Let your truth stand against the whispers, and let her rise with you. Adrian rose, lifting Eleanor with him. His eyes held hers, steady, fierce, tender. Eleanor, will you? Her heart swelled, tears shimmering. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Applause broke out, mingled with scandalous whispers, but Adrian silenced it all by pressing his lips to her gloved hand. The world blurred, the room spinning with shock and awe, but all Eleanor felt was the truth of his touch. For the first time, she was no longer mocked, no longer invisible. She was chosen. And as Lady Whistledown's quill scratched feverishly in some hidden corner, Eleanor knew tomorrow's scandal sheet would crown them the most shocking and the most romantic couple of the season. Equals 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 equals. The morning after the Queen's banquet dawned soft and golden, sunlight spilling through the Whitcomb estate's windows as if the heavens themselves wished to bless her. For once, Eleanor did not dread opening her eyes. The echo of last night lived fresh in her heart, the Duke kneeling before the Queen, his voice steady as he claimed her above every whisper, every lie. She sat at her dressing table, hair tumbling loose about her shoulders, when Cecily burst into the chamber, cheeks flushed. Eleanor! It is everywhere. Every column, every paper, they write of nothing else. You are the story of the season. Eleanor braced herself, expecting cruelty. But Cecily snatched up a copy of Lady Whistledown's scandal sheet and thrust it into her hands. Eleanor read the bold headline, her heart stumbling. The spinster no more, the Duke's choice of courage over cruelty. Her breath caught. Instead of mockery, the lines beneath painted her as a heroine who had endured ridicule with dignity, a woman who had captured the heart of the untouchable Duke through resilience rather than scheming. For the first time in her life, she was not invisible. She was admired. Tears stung her eyes. I never thought I would see the day. Cecily clasped her hand, her own smile wavering with something like shame. I am sorry for the ways I overlooked you, Ellie. You were always more than they said. More than I ever gave you credit for. Eleanor drew her sister into an embrace, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Later that afternoon, Adrian arrived at the estate, no longer in the shadows of secrecy but in the full blaze of day. He entered the drawing room where Eleanor waited, his storm-grey eyes softening the moment they found hers. "Eleanor," he said simply, as though her name alone steadied him. She rose, nerves fluttering, but his hand reached for hers with unshakable certainty. "The Queen has blessed our union. The papers may shout, the world may argue, but none of it matters if you say the word." He paused, his voice low and rough. "Marry me. Not because my estate needs saving. Not because the ton demands it. But because you are the only woman who has ever seen the man behind the title." Her breath trembled. "And you, Adrian, are the only man who ever saw me at all." Their hands entwined. He bent his forehead to hers, and in the quiet of that moment, all the cruelty and mockery of the past dissolved like smoke. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will be your wife." His lips brushed hers, gentle, reverent, sealing the vow neither crown nor scandal could undo. Weeks later, Eleanor stood in the gardens of Blackmore, now Duchess, the air sweet with roses and the promise of spring. Children of the tenants laughed beyond the hedges, their voices bright. The estate thrived, no longer burdened, her counsel and Adrian's strength entwined in stewardship as surely as in love. She walked arm in arm with him along the gravel path, their steps in rhythm. The world had not stopped whispering, they doubted, they speculated, but it no longer mattered. For every whisper, there was his hand holding hers, his gaze steady, his love unyielding. As they paused beneath a blooming rose arch, Eleanor lifted her face to the sky. She thought of that night at her sister's ball, when she had been nothing more than the subject of cruel laughter. How strange, how miraculous, that humiliation had become the beginning of everything. Adrian's arm circled her waist, drawing her close. "What do you see?" he asked. She smiled through quiet tears. "The life I never believed I could have." "And what is that?" She leaned into him, her voice steady. "To be loved, completely." He kissed her then, under the roses, with the certainty of a man who had fought through pride, fear, and scandal to find the one woman who could undo him. And Eleanor knew, with every beat of her heart, that love had not only transformed her fate, it had saved them both. Would you have trusted the Duke's love, knowing his survival depended on marriage? Do you believe love can truly transform shame into triumph?